Hi everyone, welcome to the long-awaited episode number 29 of Sketch Support. This is always my favorite series because I love creating and using sketches so much, and I especially love sharing with you the many ways you can customize them. If you are new to Sketch Support, my name is Allison Davis, and I am a scrapbooker and sketch artist for my family's scrapbook store, Scrapbook Generation, and I am also the sketch artist for Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine. Sketch Support is a series where I take one scrapbook sketch and show you multiple ways to use, adapt, and customize that sketch to your own needs. Each layout I'm going to share in this video is completely different and has used the sketch in a unique way. And I go into detail of how and why I adapt the sketch to work with different themes and photo sizes and my own ideas that I wanted to infuse into the design. Speaking of the sketch, there is a new free one-page sketch that you can download at scrapbookgeneration.com. And that is going to be the star of this video and the starting point for each layout I'm sharing with you. And there's also a 3-page PDF for this sketch that has 23 more sketch examples, giving you a visual of the many ways you can alter this one sketch. What I love about those bonus sketch examples is that you can use each one for a completely different layout, or you can mix and match different options for endless possibilities, all from this one sketch. And before I jump into it all, there are a few things I want to mention. First, I've got a new year-long class coming up in 2024. Since I am the sketch artist for Scrapbooking Cards Today magazine, we got together and plotted a fun sketch class that will take place over the next year. It's going to be laid out similar to this sketch support series with lots of added content on top of that. Each month, I'll be sharing a sketch, a lesson, some challenges. There will also be a monthly process video, bonus sketches, giveaways from some of your favorite companies like Simple Stories and Echo Park and Photoplay and more. There will also be live videos, a Facebook group, so you get that community, and then there'll be galleries for each month where you can add your layouts. There is a mix of 1-page and 2-page sketches, and the bonus sketches will show how to adapt one to the other, along with an 8.5 by 11-inch option. So there's something for everyone there. Now, if you aren't on Facebook, no worries. This content, with the exception of the layout galleries, is available to you as well through the Scrapbooking Cards Today website. And I think you all will love the price. It is only $45 for the whole year. So that's less than $4 a month. And if you've never taken a class with me, just know that I bust my butt to make sure you get your money's worth. That's always really, really important to me. The second thing I wanted to mention is that I have added 4 new sketch sets to our store at Scrapbook Generation. 2 of them feature 3x4-inch and 4x3-inch photos only. There's one for 2-page layouts and one for 1-page layouts. And these 2 were a customer request, and they were so much fun to create. I am so glad that she requested those. Then there is a 1-page set that features 2 photos and a 2-page set that features 12 photos. And I'll link to everything I've mentioned, the class and the sketches, down below in the video description so you can check them out if you want to. So I feel like I've been rambling on forever. So let's go ahead and jump into the purpose of this video with a quick look at the sketch that I've used for all the layouts in this video. This was one of those sketch designs that came together better than I imagined. I really enjoy creating designs where a strip will lead to a shape, and I decided to take that concept and use strips that lead to photos. Then the bottom of those photos kind of explode into this giant detailed cluster of stars. It's one of those designs that you can kind of go crazy with detail without overwhelming the important parts of your layout. The strips lead right to your photos while the large cluster frames them. And both of those details bring that attention right to those photos, which in scrapbooking, that should be most of the time our main focus on a layout. This sketch is a good example of a way I often like to design by balancing a busier detail like the stars with the simple detail like the strips. Now that we have had a look at this sketch, let's go ahead and move on to the first layout. With my first layout, I stayed quite close to the overall sketch design, only making a small adjustment to adapt the sketch to work for my summer and swimming theme by using splashes instead of stars. Usually, if I'm working with a specific theme like this, I first think about things that are associated with that theme. So for water, my mind immediately goes to splashes. And when I looked at this sketch, I immediately envisioned the photos falling from the top of the layout into a big splash at the bottom. And originally, I wanted to use photos of someone jumping into water, but I didn't have any printed and ready, so I went with these snorkeling photos instead. I used my favorite splash cut file on my Silhouette to cut out several droplets in different patterns, sizes, and shades of the same color. And I'll make sure and let you know what the cut file number is of that in case you want to check it out. I use it all the time, pretty much on every water layout I make. The title is kind of the focal point of the cluster detail along the bottom edge of the photos. So I tried to kind of shape the splashes around that, kind of like the title is the object that hits the water and creates this big splash. Anytime I am creating a large cluster design using the same shape over and over, I like to add some texture and dimension with stitching and then by adhering some pieces with foam adhesive. Doing this adds even more interest and detail to that design. It really kind of brings it to life. The other change I made to the sketch for this layout is the detail around the journaling block. I decided to use a chipboard sun in place of the stars on the sketch. I thought it was a fitting placement for a sun on a summer layout, and it kind of further enhanced that theme with the splash design along the bottom edge. With my second layout, I made several small changes to adapt the sketch design to work with a different photo size. I decided to rotate the sketch so that those vertical strips became horizontal strips. I had three 3.5 by 2.5 inch photos, and while it would have worked to use them without rotating the sketch, I really liked the idea of them being stacked in order of action from top to bottom. I also felt like they worked better that way since they are horizontal photos. Had they been vertical photos, I most likely would have arranged them as shown on the sketch. If I had followed the sketch and placed these photos side by side, they would have stretched almost all the way to the left and right edges. And I like the idea of having some room on the edges for some white space and a few stars to wrap around those photos. I could better achieve that by rotating the sketch and arranging the photos this way. I guess a more simple way of saying that would have been I did it this way because I liked the way it looked. And sometimes that is the only explanation we need. Don't ever feel like you can't change a sketch. That sketch is just a suggestion. If you like something better, don't be afraid to change it up. It is your layout and your scrapbook, and it should be a representation of what you like and what looks good to you. And don't ever let anyone tell you differently. Another small change I made was to the strips. I cut the strips slightly smaller than the photos so that there is a little gap between each one. Since I used the same gray paper for each strip, this helped to break it up and show that each one is an individual strip. I also added a small striped strip on each of the larger gray strips. And I use this to tie all of the gray colored strips in with the colorful stars. Stripes are always such a good paper for uniting all of the colors on your layout. I love using them in small strips like this for that very purpose. I also moved the title and journaling onto the horizontal strips, kind of grouped together near the photos to better work with the sketch rotation and my photos. Sometimes you've got to kind of move things around a little to better work for you or your ideas or photos or the different elements on your layout. For the rest of the design, I followed the sketch quite closely with lots of stars layered and clustered together along the edge of the photos. I added lots of hand stitching in colors that coordinated with the larger stars. Then I used foam adhesive to add several smaller stars on top. And then I also added in some arrow strips to help show the movement and action in the photos from top to bottom. With my third layout, I made some really big changes. In fact, you might be looking at the layout and thinking it doesn't look anything like the sketch. And you're right, it really doesn't, at least at not first glance. But the general design concept is there. It's just been expanded into a 2-page layout, customized to a different theme, and then I input a little spin on the elements of the sketch. And that's the beauty of sketches. They are not a rule to be followed. They are a starting point for you to build on with your own creative ideas. It's up to you how you interpret that sketch design, and there's no right or wrong way to do that. You can follow it exactly down to each and every detail, or you can take one or two elements from the sketch and infuse your own ideas into it. Now, first, to create a 2-page layout with this 1-page sketch, I extended the design across both pages. And this is a super simple method for adapting a sketch to work on a larger layout. It's just taking the components of the sketch and repeating them to extend across both pages. The next big change I made was flipping the sketch so that the strips come up from the bottom and the star detail is along the top edge of the photos. But I swapped out those stars and strips for flowers with stems. Anytime I see strips on a sketch, I like to think of themed elements that I can use in place of those strips. For horizontal strips, it might be things like tree branches or driving cars. And for vertical strips, it might be things like birthday candles, falling leaves, or in the case of this layout, flowers with stems. For the stems, I used a chain link stitch with all 6 strands of embroidery floss. So it had lots of bulk and texture. I wanted those stems to really stand out. Then I added some green leaves here and there along the stems. And I want to show you a really fast and easy way you can make those leaves. All you need is a circle punch. And first you punch out a circle in the color that you want your leaf to be. And then using that same circle punch, you punch out a little section of the circle, creating a leaf. And you can do this with any size of circle punch, depending on how big or little you want your leaves to be. At the ends of each stitched stem, I added a flower die cut. And at first I was just going to leave them as they are because they're so beautiful straight out of the package. But my brain always screams at me to add more stitching. So that's exactly what I did. I coordinated the embroidery floss colors to match the color of the flower I was stitching on, and then varied the design depending on the shape of the flower and what kind of design was on top of that flower. I also adhered all of these with foam adhesive. I always love lots of dimension on my layouts, so that was a definite must for me. Since the strips were turned into stems and stitched, that left me with hardly any pattern paper on the layout. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I really wanted to incorporate some pattern papers into this design without taking away from the flower and stem design. And I thought a fun way to work that in was by adding pattern paper mats to each photo. And then I added a few chipboard frames on top of a few photos. The last details I added were along the bottom of the layout. Because the flower stems are so skinny, I thought it would be a great idea to fill in the bottom of the layout with vines and leaves and some pumpkins, really kind of creating this scene of flowers and stems and then the ground at the bottom of the layout. I also added some hand stitch detail on some of the larger leaves. So that's all for this episode of Sketch Support. I hope you found some sketch inspiration today. And if you want to play along with this sketch and you post it online, be sure to tag me so I can see it. I love sharing layouts that others have created with these sketches. And don't forget about the new sketch class coming up in 2024. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.